Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Vetting America, episode 15. We are live here at the Attic Cafe in downtown Tampa. It's a little bit of a dreary day, but it's summer in Florida, so it isn't that bad. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Rich and McIntyre of McIntyreFirm.com, Chris Chrismistos of Podfest.us, the biggest podcast expo in the country, coming to Orlando in 2019 of March. And, of course, the amazing executive producer, Anthony Kovic of the Tampa Post. I would like to welcome our guest, Russ Barnes, retired full bird colonel of the United States Air Force and currently a senior business advisor at Systro Consulting. He is an author, public speaker, entrepreneur, and overall pretty awesome and amazing individual. Currently attending Benedictine University for a PhD in organizational development. Thank you so much, Russ, again, for coming on.
Glad to be on the show.
So let's get right into it.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your time in the Air Force. I think you might be my first officer I've had on the show. So your entire experience is completely different than most of the people that have come on my show. So tell us a little bit about your time in the Air Force.
Okay, I'm going to try to wrap it pretty quickly because I had 27 years on active duty. I came through a reserve officer training program, so I was commissioned through ROTC, and my first duty assignment was as B-52 radar navigator. Okay. So coming right in, I went right into navigation training. You know, we did the survival school and all those things to prepare us for that. We were well into the nuclear environment at that time. You know, main adversary was Russia, so everything was about the nuclear training. So we had, you know, very high clearances, and that's what I did for my first 11 years on active duty, was basically work my way through the aviation progression. My first assignment to a staff job was in '93. Okay. I was coming up on major, and I had every full expectation to go back to flying, but that's not the way it ended up working out. And the remainder of my career was 16 years on staff, on various headquarters staff. 9 of those years I spent in joint service. Yes. So Strategic Command, European Command, Joint Staff at the Pentagon, and retired at a Central Command at MacDill, which is what brought me here to Tampa. Amazing, amazing. Why did you decide to join back in the day? You make interesting decisions when you're a 17-year-old. Yes, and as a 17-year-old, I knew I wanted to go to college. That was a big thing. And I come from a large family. My father already had put my 2 older brothers through school, so I knew he didn't really have money for me to be able to go to school. And I did fairly well on my SATs. And all the services started contacting me, and they were asking me to compete for their scholarships. And I thought, well, that might be a good option for me. Okay. And so I did. I looked at all the different scholarship options. The Air Force really appealed to me, and I decided to go ahead and apply for that scholarship, and I did. I ended up getting a 4-year ROTC scholarship, and that's what paid for my school, and that's where it started. You served both in Operation Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. You served during these times. I did. So you went from peace to war to peace to war. Not really peace the first time around, it was the Cold War. Right. What's that like to be in the service when you go from times of peace, times of war, and then you see it come full circle, making the same mistakes over and over again in terms of policy decisions, and you having to almost foot the bill with sweat equity in a way? First, I'm going to start with this. I had a very good instructor when I was in nav school. And he pulled us all together in a room, and he said, you guys are second lieutenants. If you expect to do a 20-year career and not go through a war, you're fooling yourself. So you need to be prepared to go to war. You need to prepare yourself, and you need to prepare your family. That was probably the best advice I got as an early officer in aviation that anybody could possibly give me. I did tell my wife, we were not married at that time. We were planning on getting married. So she was, you know, my girlfriend at the time. I said, look, I may end up having to go to war at some point during my career. You need to be aware of that. And when I did actually leave and head off to go to Desert Storm, you know, I flew combat missions during Desert Storm. She was one of the most prepared wives because she had always understood that day would someday come. Absolutely. And we had young kids at the time. Oh, okay. Matter of fact, when I went off to combat, my 3rd son was 5 months old. 5 months, 6 months old. Very, very young. So you go through that, and you have to prepare yourself for the next one because you know the next one is coming. So I think rather than being frustrated that we were going from war to peace to war to peace, it was what did we do in the last one and how can we be prepared for the next one? And you can't always fight the last war because people see how you perform and they do something different. So what we experienced during, Iraqi freedom was vastly different than what we experienced during Desert Storm. You're right. And during Iraqi freedom, the types of wars actually shifted at least 3 times. It's true. So it's intense, and you're engaged in what you're doing, and you're trying to win. So there's no time for really frustration or disappointment at how we're doing. We just have to figure this thing out. You have to perform. So it's kind of that way. So when we get into the peacetime scenarios, then it becomes planning. Then it becomes, strategic and how do we think through this so that we can prevent the next conflict from happening if possible. Okay. And of course, it's not always possible because the world events are, in a sense, out of our control. We're a last resort. Yes. By the time we go down and start, laying the hammer down, all other diplomatic and political options have at least been tried. Exactly. Yeah.
Do you remember where you were on September 11th? In 2001.
I was at the Air Force Doctrine Center in Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, and it was interesting because I was briefing general officers that day, and it was a 6-hour presentation that I had to give. So I was in doing the early morning stuff, and then I came back to my desk, and we had a TV in there, and I saw something going on the TV, and people were watching it, and then I had to leave and go back in to do the next session and brief, and then I came out again, and this thing is going on, and then after a while, it started to escalate, and people said, "Wait a minute," and you really started to get a sense of what was really happening, and that was where I was.
What did it go through your head when you knew what just happened? Like when it was established that this was a terrorist attack on our country, and you're what rank at this point?
I was a lieutenant colonel.
So you're a lieutenant colonel at this point. You're a leader of leaders.
Right.
What does that feel like personally when you go, everything's just changed?
I've always been a strategist.
Yes.
And my mind always runs to the long term.
Okay.
What are we doing today to get us to a certain point in the future? And when that happened, it was the first question was, who was it? Who did it? And how do we respond? Mm-hmm. And we had to make sure we responded to the right threat, because if you just choose somebody, then it just makes the situation worse altogether.
Yes.
So we immediately got thrown into a mode of how do we assess all of this information that's coming in and identify where we need to apply our resources and assets in order to make the next move. And then, of course, the next thing for me in that situation was coalition building. How do we get our allies around the world to rally with us so that we can make this more than just a U.S. retaliation against some organization or other. So there's a lot of things going on.
Yes.
And my mind doesn't run to the emotional side of things. It never really has. Mm-hmm. It always runs to the purposeful side
solutions.
Of things. To solutions, to what do we do now?
Let's move to the transitional conversation.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So you spend nearly 30 years in a total institution.
Yes.
It's all you've known. It's all you've done.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, you get your DD-214 in hand, and you walk across that gate.
Yes.
What now?
I'm going to back that up very quickly because throughout my career, I was always planning forward, and I would ask people who retired, "Well, what made you decide? What made you decide to retire?" And all of them would always say, "I don't know. It was just time. It was just time." And I'm thinking, that's not useful.
It's not helping me.
There must have been some decision process that made you decide to retire.
27 years of decisions.
But when it came time for me to retire, it was time.
It was time.
Because there had always been something that I'd wanted to do in the Air Force, or something that the Air Force was asking me to do.
Yes.
And it came to a point where there was just nothing really more that I wanted to do, and the Air Force wasn't asking me to go do something on their behalf, and it was just time.
Yes.
It was just time. And so when I did know one thing, when it came up on retirement, I knew one thing only. I said, I will never, ever, ever work for anybody ever again.
Yes.
Because I've had an entrepreneurial spirit since I was a kid, and now this was my opportunity to be out there in control of my own ability to earn, in control of my time, in control of my achieving my own desired outcomes, and not having somebody who would say, no, you can't do that, no, we don't have the resources to do that, no, that's not part of your job, no, that's not in our plan. I could just go do it and make it happen.
You didn't want anything holding you back anymore.
I didn't want anything holding me back.
That's a big reason I got out of the Marine Corps. I mean, I didn't do 27 years. I only did 5, but I knew I loved the Marine Corps, but I knew that I had reached that glass ceiling where if I wanted to bust through that, I needed to get out and really do it on my own because the growth I wanted to attain wasn't really happening as quickly as I wanted it to.
Exactly.
So you're a veteran entrepreneur.
Right.
You're a vetpreneur. That's that's the key term being coined by Carlos Romero of Tampa. My question to you: what does being a vetpreneur mean to you, and why Tampa?
It means freedom to me, and when you can control your ability to earn, then you have options and you have choices.
Okay.
And my goal is always to have enough money so that I didn't have to think about it. You know, I don't think any entrepreneur who becomes successful focuses on the money.
No.
They focus on what is my value? How do I bring that to a community? How do I make people's pain go away? How do I solve their pain problems in such a way that they will pay me to do that?
Okay.
And when you make that connection, now your life is fun. Your life is, you're enthusiastic about what you do. And I don't really chase happiness. Happiness is fleeting.
Yes.
But I do pursue fulfillment.
And that's where happiness is.
Fulfillment, you can be purposeful in achieving fulfillment. Happiness, you can be up one minute, the next minute somebody says something nasty to you and you're unhappy.
Yes.
And then the next minute somebody gives you a kiss and you're happy.
Yes.
And so happiness is fleeting, but fulfillment is something that you can really focus on.
Absolutely.
So being a vetrepreneur means to me taking control, building my value, contributing my value, and being compensated for that in a way that I can continue to grow and help communities.
How has that helped your transition being an entrepreneur?
Tremendously.
It's different, I feel like, for a transition for an officer and an enlisted. So explain a little bit of what your transition was like, some of the issues you had to traverse, and why entrepreneurship really helped you kind of take control of yourself, master what you needed to master so that you can build a life you wanted to build out here.
Yeah. The transition is actually similar for officer and enlisted.
Okay.
It's a matter of magnitude.
Yes,
As
true.
a senior officer, you know, lieutenant colonel, when you leave the military, you want to go do something that you've been used to doing. You want to have the level of responsibility that you're used to having. Well, no one on the outside is going to hire you into a position as a vice president when you have no experience in their industry. So it's a real challenge for an officer to make that transition and get the type of job that they're looking for, you know, just the same as it is for an enlisted person. Mm-hmm. We all have skills, talents, values, things that we develop during our military careers, but making that transition is equally difficult for us, no matter what rank, no matter how much time we've been in service, no matter what our credentials. If I laid out my credentials, it would blow you away. But I went to job interviews where they said, hey, you've got an impressive resume, but we don't see a fit for you here in our company.
I know.
So it's the same. But I would like to make this point. There's a difference that we don't recognize as veterans, and it kills us. And the difference is this. There's transition, and then there's transformation. And transition is when, let's say you're in the medical field in the military and you decide to go into the medical field as a civilian, there's a transition. You make sure you already have the skills, talents, and abilities, you already understand the language, they know what you've done, and it's a matter of cleaning up the credentials, the legal stuff, the certifications, and that's a transition. You're going from a known to a known, and it's just a matter of personnel and culture. If you are security police and you decide, I don't want to go into law enforcement in the civilian community, you're in a transformation. Because now, let's say you decide you want to go into IT. Well, now you don't have those experiences that the IT community would recognize, and you have to transform yourself. We get into trouble as veterans when we don't recognize we're in a transformation, we're expecting things to happen quickly, and they don't.
Two great points. Verbiage is so important when discussing yourself. And I have a lot of mentors and a lot of people I look up to that are always harping on me to change the words I use. Right. Because words they encompass vibrations and energy that you push out into the universe, and that will come back onto you.
Right.
So even if in just fleeting or in jest you say, "Oh, I'm dumb," because you made a mistake,
right.
you say that enough, and you actually start to believe it subconsciously, and you'll start forgetting more things. And you start actually performing like you're dumb.
That's right.
Words have power. And then the second thing to that is the idea that we expect things to happen so quickly because in the military things happen so quickly.
Exactly.
But in this game, it's the long game out here. It is a long game.
And that's a key point in my journey, because when I retired from the military, I felt like I could make anything happen in any amount of time with nothing starting out. And my aspirations for myself as an entrepreneur were way over what was reality at the time. You know, I had these ideas that I was going to build a multi-million-dollar company within a period of 5 years, and I had laid out my goals, and I had laid out this plan for how I was going to make all that happen. And people would tell me, they said, well, things don't happen fast here. You're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to take your time. You're going to have to work through certain things. Networking. They say it's going to take you at least 10 years to build a functional network, meaning when you pick up the phone, people will answer your call or collaborate with you on projects. It's going to take you at least 10 years before you get there. I'm like,
I made that.
That may be for somebody else, but not me. I'm a good guy. I know how to work with people. I'm a collaborator.
I've been networking for 27 years.
Helpful, you know, and so I felt that I could make things happen much faster, and I had to learn the hard way that some
school hard knocks
takes time.
Oh, the best things take time.
Right.
Honestly.
So now I consider myself to be a business strategist, because along the way I learned that strategy was one of my strengths. And all strategy means to me is how do you get from where you are to where you want to be. And once you have laid that out, generally speaking, it gives you patience. You don't run a marathon in 2 or 3 miles. You have to run every one of those 26.2 miles in order to get to the finish. You cannot speed it up. You cannot accelerate it. You can run faster
at times,
but that's the best you can do.
But you can't run faster for a sustainable amount of times. And sometimes you got to run a little slower.
And sometimes if you expend too much energy early in the game, you run out.
And I've done that over and over again. I couldn't believe that a lot of my depression and anxiety that I manifested for myself were coming from burnout.
Yes.
From just because all I knew in the Marine Corps was 110% all the time. Go, go, go. You'll figure it out. Rub some sand on it. You know, get some chow. You get back to the mission. But out here, you know. Yeah.
In the military, we had a tremendous infrastructure, not only of material and equipment, but of personnel.
Yes.
So you knew that the guy next to you was going to have your back. You knew that if you got too overwhelmed, somebody was going to be there to join in with you. You could get somebody to assist, and you could all make it happen because you all had the same objective, national security. Well, outside of the military, you don't have that. Everyone has their own individual desired outcome. And if you're fortunate, you can get a group of people who have a common desired outcome, and you can collaborate with them. But it doesn't happen as a matter of culture or as a matter of purpose. You have to create that. Something I learned along the way. I didn't know that when I first retired, and I thought I could do it all myself.
You can't. Rome wasn't built in a day, and Rome wasn't built alone.
That's exactly.
And that's one of my favorite sayings, and it's overused, but it's pertinent all the time.
It is. It really is.
So you're in consulting now. You're a senior business strategist, correct? For Systro.
Right.
So explain to us a little bit about Systro Consulting. How'd you get involved with it, and why did you find yourself falling into consulting, which that's my passion, consulting. I mean, I did a lot of consulting even in the Marine Corps, and I feel like that's where it comes from. It's like that military background of always trying to find efficiencies and effectiveness for the things that we're doing. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So it came from my first experience as an entrepreneur out of the military was as a franchisee. I bought a leather restoration and vinyl repair franchise because that was risk acceptable for me at that time. I researched a lot of different businesses and a lot of different business opportunities, and realized through my research that I wasn't ready to jump out on my own, and I needed some development. So that was the way of me getting sort of a master's degree in being an entrepreneur. I said, well, if I function within this framework, and then I can learn, can I even be an entrepreneur? Do I have the capability? Do I have the mentality? Do I have the intestinal fortitude, the mental stamina? I had all those questions when I started, so the franchise helped me work through those.
It's a really good idea.
I did that franchise business for 3 years, sold the territory after 3 years, because at that point, I'd done all of the different cold calling up and down the street, knocking on doors, marketing, everything that you have to do as a business owner, I'd done.
It was an entrepreneurship internship, basically.
It was
profitable.
It was exactly my own entrepreneur internship. It did make me feel like I wish I had an apprenticeship going into that experience, but that wasn't really available. But I had great support from the company. That was the biggest thing. I chose the right company because they supported me 100%. I was even on a 5-year contract, and they let me out after 3 years and helped me sell my territory to somebody else. So they were very, very good, very, very good to me. But that was part of my plan, because I said, I don't know what product or service I have available. I don't know what I can bring to the community in such a way that they would be willing to pay me for it. And I had to figure that piece out. And I also said, I can't have any credibility in terms of wanting to be in business if I'm not in business. Some of the advice I got from people would say, go work for a company, see how they do business, and then take that and then move on to your own thing, branch off from there. But I really didn't know what company to work for because I had really no idea. So the franchise got me in business, and being in business, my goal was to at that point, identify what I would be good at. And as I was in that environment and I saw small business owners struggling, and I was using all the things I learned in the military to help my business grow and reach a certain level of success, I said, you know what, there's a gap here. Something's missing. It seems like people are doing the right things in the right way, and the way they're being told that they need to do it, but they're not making any money. And we're in business to make money. So that sparked my interest in finding that answer. And then I began to research, and I began to try to identify what was missing. And as I did begin to identify what was missing, and then I started to say, okay, how do we solve that problem? How do we fix this?
And it brings you right back to being a colonel again.
And so, right, exactly. And so I formed Systro is my company.
That's what I was wondering, yes.
Yeah, I formed Systro.
Okay.
And Systro stands for Systems, Strategies, and Organization.
Okay.
It's one of the things that's missing. It's a purposeful, intentional approach to achieving a desired outcome. And in many cases, business owners go into business to make money first. And so they choose a company or a business that seems to have made money for somebody else, and they think it's going to make money for them. But that's not the case. What's going to make you money is the internal motivation that you have, the skills, talents, and abilities that you've developed, and bringing those to a person in a way that's going to solve a pain problem that they have. So you have to look inside first, and then you need to work outside down that path. And that is one of the key things that's missing. So once you pick that desired outcome, then you have to have some sort of frameworks that guide your thinking on a daily basis, because we're all unique. Our systems, our situations are unique. Our circumstances are different.
Shortcomings are different.
Our strengths, our weaknesses, all different. So I can't do business the way you do business, because you're stronger in certain areas that I'm very weak in.
Yes.
I'm stronger in other areas. So I can't look at your systems and say, oh, if I use Adam's systems, then I'm going to be successful. It just won't work.
That's why learning you yourself is so important.
I spent a lot of money buying other people's systems, thinking that, okay, well, this is a proven system. Well, this system has worked. This system has worked, until one day I realized the system only works for the person who created it. So that is the gap. That is what I recognized as the missing piece.
So you're creating your own systems for people?
No, I'm teaching people how to create their own systems.
There you go.
That's what I do.
You teach a man to fish, and he can eat for a lifetime.
Exactly.
Okay.
So based on so what I work through is so for example, different constructs that I have. One of the constructs that I use is focus first. You have to have a narrow focus on what you're doing.
Oh, it's so big.
Strategy second. Once you have your focus and you know what your basic objective is, and it doesn't have to be complicated or detailed. Coming out of the military was simply, I want to learn how to be an entrepreneur. That was it. No more detailed or complicated than that.
Yes.
But it put me on the path, and it started enabling me to drive towards what is an entrepreneur. How do entrepreneurs function? How do entrepreneurs become successful? Who are some of these successful entrepreneurs? I'm doing my own work. I'm using my own skills, talents, and abilities to proceed towards my own desired objective, and nobody's telling me what to do. But yet I listen to everyone.
Everyone.
You know, I had coaches, I had other consultants, and I could listen to them, but then I could filter it into.
You got to create it for yourself. Absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm creating. So focus is first, strategy is second. How do you get from where you are to where you want to be? Team is third. Resources are fourth.
Yes. And people go backwards.
And money. And then the last one is appropriate action.
Yes.
Appropriate action. When you get up in the morning, there are 1,000 things you can do. There are 1,000,000 things you have to do, and you have to figure out which one of these is most appropriate to help me get from where I am to where I want to be.
Which brings you back to focus.
Which brings you back to focus.
Which is what I'm learning to be the most important thing that was missing in my success. I call it the success equation. Everyone has their own equation of success.
Right.
Mine was finding exactly what it is that I want to do and just sticking to that.
Exactly. So when you look at some of the people who have been most successful entrepreneurially, you look at Bill Gates, you look at Warren Buffett, you look at Richard Branson, you look at these folks, and it's interesting because there's another aspect to this: introvert, extrovert. I'm an introvert. And it doesn't mean shy or retired. It simply means where do you get your energy from. And introverts lose energy when they're in a big crowd, whereas extroverts gain energy being in a big crowd. So I had to look at that, and I said, okay, given my personality, can I be successful? I'm not a rah-rah guy, so can I be successful? Well, Bill Gates is an introvert. Warren Buffett's an introvert. What happens is when you, as an introvert, know what you're talking about, you tend to appear to be an extrovert, and they stayed very narrowly focused. Bill Gates did one thing, essentially. He built
20
Microsoft.
Years.
Exactly.
Before he went and did everything else.
Warren Buffett did one thing: value investing. There are evolutions of that happen, and it grows, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but essentially they knew what they were trying to accomplish.
And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong in the beginning, is you have these people like Richard Branson, who owns how many successful $1 million companies? But he started with one.
But when you look at it, he's doing one thing.
Yes.
The one thing he's doing is Virgin.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
When he looks at Virgin, he says, this is what Virgin does. And he actually looks at other businesses and says, you know what? I don't think they're doing that business as well as I could do it. I'm going to add that into the Virgin group.
But it started with one.
It started with one. Started with the radio. Started with the radio station. Yep. So Thomas Edison said the same. He says the difference between me being successful and other people not being successful is I spend 18 hours a day doing one thing, while they spend 18 hours a day doing 18 different things. It's all about focus. Starting out, it's all about focus. And we as veterans have a real problem with that, because during our military careers, we're told to do whatever has to be done in order to make the mission successful. And my career took me from B-52 bomber aviation to fighter programs to building a nuclear war plan to doctrine to political military to intel to policy. And the Air Force didn't prepare me for those things. They didn't give me any education or training. They just said, this is where you're going next. And I had to figure it out. So in one sense, it does help you be an entrepreneur. It helped me build entrepreneurial skills. But in the other sense, I envied the Army guys who had a track. This guy.
Very specialized.
He's a foreign area officer. He's a fail, and this is the track that he follows for his career. He becomes expert. He becomes incredibly effective and efficient. He's got a history that he can reach back onto. And I was like, man, that must be nice.
By the time I was 23 years old, I was running a $25 million aircraft shop.
Yeah.
I was already a welder, advanced composites, aircraft painter.
Yeah.
And I had gotten some training in machining.
Right.
I was a collateral duty inspector, a production controller, a quality assurance. Because the Marine Corps is so tiny.
Right.
We have to pull 15, 20 different jobs.
Right.
But then I would go on deployment, and we would work alongside the Army. And if you're a metalsmith, which was initially my job, which is bending metal and fabricating metal, that is what you do, and that is all you do unless you lat move.
That's right.
So
exactly.
I like that about the Marine Corps.
Right.
And it helps me. Because my brain is, once I master something, I get bored.
Yes.
So I got mastered, and now he's had something else, just like you.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize is how that was going to actually negatively affect me out here.
Yeah, that's right.
Because now I'm having issues where I need to do 5 different things at once, but it's not effective.
Right. That's exactly right.
So moving on.
I want to throw something in there real quickly because another part of that is I used to get a little bit frustrated when people would say, oh, you're that way because you were in the military. The military made you that way. No. And I always said to myself, initially, before I sat down and gave some thought to it, I said, the military didn't make me who I am. I kind of resented that. And then what I realized is that the military filters certain people with certain attributes. And if you have the attribute to be able to multitask on a very wide level, then you're a good fit for the military and you pass through those filters. If you can only focus on one thing at a time, you won't make it. And so the military, so we've been filtered, and then collectively we then work with each other, and we all do the same thing, and we all have the same mentality, and given the urgency of our job, we take it to a much higher level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why Tampa?
It's just where I retired.
Yeah.
It just happened to be where I retired.
Do you think there was some serendipity to that? Because the veteran entrepreneurial community here is incredible. I talk about it every show because it's a really big aspect of my life, my transition, who I am today, my transformation.
Right.
So what does Tampa mean to you now, and what does the veteran entrepreneurial community in Tampa mean to you?
Tampa is it's a curse and a blessing for me, because what they said about networking was true. It took a really long time to build a functional network, and to be honest, over the past 2 years, I've actually kind of dismantled it because I went off on my PhD journey and didn't continue to feed the network as I had been doing those previous 7 years. So that's a challenge. Business in Florida is very relational, whereas business where I grew up in New York and other major cities is more transactional. So you can get business done faster. So I say it's a blessing and a curse because I feel blessed that I had the opportunity to grow up as an entrepreneur in this environment and learn that to be successful, you have to be collaborative. And there's a certain aspect of competitiveness that is great and that is necessary, but you can compete with someone and not try to kill them. You know, you can compete with someone in such a way that you both become
community over
like
competition.
Iron sharpens iron. You know, that type of competition. So I really value this community. I value tremendously the Tampa community's vision and their energy and aspirations towards making this even better than it is now, even better than it was when I started back in 2009, and even better than it is now. The goals for this place seem to be unlimited, and I love being in this environment.
What are some of the resources that you've used either for veterans or outside that have helped make you who you are today post-military service, as in veteran organizations and resources, any types of groups that help you become better at whatever it is that you wanted to become better at?
That's a really, really long list. I'm going to give you a few, though. So when I used the Small Business Administration, Small Business Development Center, SCORE. Those were early resources that I reached out to in the beginning. I started with Free Networking International. I went to Business Networking International, working with Keep It Local, LLC. So those are some of the networking groups I've been involved in. I went through the National Speakers Association Central Florida training program, their academy. I did that. I've been a Toastmaster since I left the military.
Let's talk about that one. Let's talk about the Toastmasters, because that's something that I'm trying to get into eventually when I have the time I want to.
Right.
I know I have a couple friends that have done it.
Right.
You're an official Toastmaster now, right? Or an honorary Toastmaster?
I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level that you can of achievement within the Toastmasters program.
How much has that helped you?
Tremendously. When obviously in the military I did tons of presentations, so Toastmasters for me wasn't about getting over a fear of public speaking. It was about learning how to communicate with a On active duty, there was a certain way you communicate, a certain way you do presentations, and I felt that wouldn't work outside of the military, and I wanted to figure out how do I now learn to communicate with a non-military audience. That's why I joined Toastmasters. I knew I was going into business, so my first few Toastmasters speeches were all about business. It was about the business I was building. It was about rehearsing presentations that I expected to give in some other venue. It was about getting feedback from the members of my Toastmasters groups on how they accepted or understood. We talked earlier about language. Is this language I'm using making sense to you? Am I communicating effectively? So Toastmasters is about communication and leadership. There were so many other things that I did within it. There's competitions. I competed in the international speech contest, and I won at the club area division and went to the district. Competed in the Tall Tales contest, and won all the way up to the district level. So it was tremendously helpful for me. And even from the standpoint of the leadership aspects of Toastmasters, holding various roles, I was Vice President of Public Relations, Vice President of Education, I was a chapter president, I was an area governor, they now call it area director. And I filled all those roles, which also helped me develop certain skills.
It seems that you're big into training and education. You have going on your 4th degree, right? You have a master's?
Yes, I have my bachelor's degree, I have 2 master's degrees, and I'm now finishing up my PhD.
What has training and education outside the military, because you get a lot of it in the military, what has that done for you in terms of preparing you for every step that you take in your career outside?
I'm a lifelong learner. Nothing fascinates me more than learning. And if I look at a challenge or I look at an opportunity and I see the potential for learning in it, I'm going. Period. And that's actually what kept me in the military for 27 years, was they kept presenting these opportunities for learning and putting those in front of me, and I have to do that. That's going to be amazing when I figure out how to do that. So my journey has always been, what do I need to know to get to the next step? What do I need to know to achieve my desired outcome? And that is what guided my selection of various opportunities. One of the other things that I've learned about being successful as a small business owner is learning is the key to success. Because when you are in business, you don't know everything, and you don't know what's around the next corner. Now, if you have experience, you can anticipate what's around the next corner.
Risk mitigation.
And if it actually happens, then you can take action and you can move to the next. But if you turn that corner and you have no idea, you have got to stop and learn what to do to get past that. And some business owners can't make that leap. They can't learn that next thing that they need to know to move forward, and they don't reach out to people who already know and bring them in so that they can make it past that next obstacle, and they're done.
Pride and ego.
It's pride and ego. Sometimes it's uncertainty. You
fear.
don't know who to trust.
I get stuck sometimes. I get so overwhelmed that I don't even act,
Right.
So
you don't know if this person you're bringing in is going to come in and take over. You don't know if they're going to come in and help you this, and then you just don't know. And it's uncertainty. And so if you can learn rapidly, or you can figure out how to bring other people in with knowledge effectively, then you can move forward. So learning is a key part of that, and I'm always seeking additional learning. Even after I finish my PhD, I'm looking for what is the next learning opportunity that I can get into to help move forward.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I'm big on education as well. You're big into leadership and organizational development, and that's a passion of mine that I want to get a master's degree in that. But my dream is to get a PhD in psychology, which I think the more I think about, I've been thinking about it a lot the last couple of weeks. I wanted to take a year off of school because I got an accounting degree in 2.5 years. And I was exhausted. And now I'm starting to really get that bug again. I'm getting that itch. Plus, I'm starting to streamline everything else in my life to where I think I can give the time to go get another degree.
Now, see, I make a distinction between academics and education as well.
People do. People are.
Academics, you're looking for a certification, you're looking for some designation and some outcome, and people will ask you, well, what's going to happen after you get that done? But when you're in education, then it's the process, it's the engagement, it's the involvement, it's the people you talk to, it's the conversations, it's the exposure to information that you can absorb and incorporate and grow with. And I told them during my interview for the PhD program, I said, I'm not here to get a PhD. I'm not here to be a PhD.
It's a journey. It's always the journey.
I'm here because I'm building a company based on organization design principles. This is the only school that has organization design within the framework of their PhD that I found. I love the fact that they were a scholar practitioner program, not just trying to prepare people to be professors. And they were looking for people who were actively engaged in the field doing organization development work. That was a criteria for getting into the program. So all of those things meshed together and said, I'm getting an education here. I'm building something mentally, knowledge-wise that's going to help me move forward. Okay. And so I make that distinction.
It seems like mindset is huge with you. We had a conversation before we started, and because mindset is, to me, the most interesting thing. Yeah. As much as you love to learn, which I'm a student of life as well, the mindset that we go about our lives is my passion. Yes. Because that creates our universe. Yeah. Yeah. What has mindset management done for you, and how have you refined it over the years?
Mindset is everything.
It's everything.
Mindset enables you to be in an ambiguous environment with no guidance or direction and feel comfortable and confident that you can control the outcome. You can't tell how much time it may take for you to get to that outcome, but you know that when you get up in the morning, those appropriate actions that you're taking are eventually going to get you to where you want to be.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with anything else except your mindset. And when I started out in business, I found out that one of the biggest challenges we face as entrepreneurs are our emotions, our feelings. And I remember having to come up with a mantra for myself that said, don't let how you feel determine how you act. Boom. I know you don't want to do what you have to do today, but you have to do it. So don't let your feelings stand in the way. Just go do it. And that was a mindset that I created for myself. Don't let how I feel determine how I act. So I'm always working on my mindset. I'm always challenging my mindset and saying, am I giving into fear? Am I succumbing to the uncertainty? Or am I really thinking about that obstacle? You know, if you're a hurdler, I was a high hurdler in high school. And when I ran the 110 high hurdles, I didn't look at every hurdle and leap it. I looked at the finish line and I had a rhythm of running to get over each one of those hurdles along the way. But if you look down at the hurdle, you're going to hit it, you're going to fall, you're going to lose. So the same thing in life. Don't look at the obstacles in front of you. Look at your goal. And then use those problem-solving skills you have to overcome those obstacles. And again, to me, that brings the fun into it. And again, it's a mindset.
It's all a mindset.
It's all about a mindset.
My mom actually helped me out with a good piece of advice the other week. And I had it at one point in my life, and I had forgotten it for like last year and a half. Yes. And because lately it's just doing the little things that... So what I'm realizing is the more books I read and the more stories I hear about very, very successful people, there's these little minute things that they do, these intricate things that they do that help set them above the rest. Right. And I just didn't want to do them. Right. I didn't want to do the extra studying. I didn't want to do the extra research. I didn't want to write out my goals and have a plan through, and I just didn't want to do it. Literally, that's my like, Mom, I just don't want to do it. And she goes, Adam, you have to change your mindset. Right. You have to say you do want to do this because you do. Right. I'm living my dream, but yet I'm not doing what I want to do because it's a little extra. Yeah. I said, you're right.
I don't talk about goals. Okay. I have goals and I constantly set goals. Mm-hmm. But goals are short term. Yes. What I talk about is your desired outcome. Okay. What is your desired outcome in life?
Love it.
When you think about what your desired outcome is, mine is for freedom. Mine is to be able to, well, first of all, I don't ever want to retire. Retirement is a word that's not in my vocabulary. So I'm creating something that is going to enable me to have an exit strategy of stop breathing. I found something I'm incredibly passionate about, which was part of my desired outcome. My desired outcome was, I said, I want to wake up every day and have what I do to earn money incorporated into my lifestyle.
Yes, yes.
I don't want to have
a career and I want an entire life
here and a family over here.
Yes,
I want it incorporated. I want
synergy.
If I travel with the family. If I travel and have a good time while I'm there. If that's part of what I have to do, bring it all together. So my desired outcome was to create a lifestyle where I had enough money so that I didn't have to think about it, and I could make a contribution given my best skills, talents, and abilities. And that's what I've been working towards. And I love it. Every day I wake up, I love it. I know what I'm
fire.
And I call it freedom.
Yes.
I'm looking for that freedom to fulfill myself. The freedom of fulfillment is what I'm really looking for. And so that's a very powerful desired outcome, because now there is nothing that I don't do. So it works this way for me. I keep a little notebook. I didn't bring it with me, but I have a little spiral notebook, and it's what I call my intentions list. The only thing that list does is it prevents me from forgetting to do something that could be important.
Okay.
But when I write something on the intentions list, I say, okay, this needs to be done, and then I do it every day. I rewrite that list every day. If I get to a point where I'm transferring the same thing from one page to the next page to the next day to the next day to the next day, I ask myself, is that important? Why am I not doing it?
Okay.
And then I'll say, okay, either it has no relevance, either I don't know how to do it and I need to figure out how to do it, or get somebody to help me do it, or I need to take it off the list. But then I can take action on it, you know. So that's why I call it intentions list as opposed to a to-do list.
I like that a lot better.
A task list.
Yes.
And so that really helps me to make sure I'm taking appropriate action. Some people may do it on their phone. It doesn't matter what you use.
You just got to look at it.
But keeping some sort of an intentions list, and that's important because we have so many things going on. It took us so many months just to get this coordinated, and we wanted to do this a few months ago. But as things come up and the complexity within your environment happens, you can't get everything done. So if somebody calls me on the phone and says, hey, I'd like you to come and do this, or I need you to do this, I'll put it on my intentions list, and then when it's a more appropriate time, I will work on that. If I know I have a presentation to do and that presentation is 2 months, I work in small increments towards getting that presentation taken care of.
Except for like me when it's just last minute. And
so, no, you know, like I said, we worked on this.
Yeah.
We coordinated it. And you were busy doing things. I had other things going on. And timing is everything.
Yep.
So it's a matter of prioritization at that point, you know, and streamlining and
absolutely.
And so what else that helps me do, which is the point I wanted to make, is it helps me filter out the things
that's huge.
Won't
the noise
get me to the point.
It's a noise. We have a lot of noise that goes on in our lives that we feel like we have to do because we're always comparing ourselves to everybody else's life.
Right.
Instead of just focusing on like what do we need to get done today.
Yeah.
And that comes back down to that intention of mindfully present.
Yeah.
You know, look at your past to connect yourself to the future.
Yes.
Look towards your future, know where you're going, but stay today. Stay in the present so that, because this is all we have.
Exactly.
And real quick,
just having that desired outcome also helps you, it makes it easier for you to say no. And I made a decision that I'm not going to do anything that what I call is a pure money play. If somebody says, oh, if you do this, or you do this, you do this, I can funnel some money your way. And I look and say, well, does that fit into what I'm trying to do?
Alignment.
Alignment. That's the word.
Alignment's everything.
That's the word.
Alignment's everything. I like to end my shows, every single show. I probably say this exact same phrase when I end the show as well. The reason I started this entire thing is because I really wanted to help bring relatability to everybody, every veteran's struggle as they try to transition or transform themselves outside of the military.
Right.
If you have a sage piece of advice to a transitioning military member, and I truly believe that we never finish getting out of the military. It's always a part of us, especially someone who's put 27 years in. It's a part of you now.
Right.
What is that advice you would give to somebody, say, a young Colonel Russ Barnes who's about to get out of the military, or even a young Adam Cummings who's about to get out of the Marine Corps? What is some advice that you would give to that?
It's what I actually see a lot of military people doing, and it is talk to people who have gone before you. Reach out. I've had so many people reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give them every bit of advice based on the experiences that I've had so that they don't have to follow that same path. And it's so easy to find people, but listen to them. Listen to them. Sometimes the veteran, the service member is retiring. They talk to someone who's gone before, and they do what I did. They go, that's for them, but not for me because I'm different. Listen to them. The other most important thing I would tell them is choose. Make a decision about what you want to do. This is one time in your life where you control your desired outcome. You control your future. Figure out what motivates you, what inspires you, what gives you enthusiasm, what brings you joy, and try to find a post-military career that puts you in that channel and keeps you there.
Yes.
And once you do that, you won't care where you start. I started out my post-military career as a leather restoration and vinyl repair man. Do you know how much, are you familiar with the term cognitive dissonance?
Yeah.
Do you know how many people's brains exploded when they hear that I'm a retired colonel doing leather restoration and vinyl repair?
Yes.
But I felt like I was in a new environment and I was a second lieutenant again.
Oh.
And I had to start from the ground zero and work my way up.
How were you able to get rid of that idea of self-entitlement? I actually fell into that pitfall getting out of college. I felt entitled to so much money, so much responsibility, and when I realized you're starting at the bottom, you're, like you said, you're a second lieutenant again.
Because when I set my desired outcome to be an entrepreneur, then all of the ego went out because I knew I didn't know what I didn't know how to do what I wanted to do. I didn't even know how to go about doing what I wanted to do. Having been out here as long as I have and having heard so many other entrepreneur stories, I now realize that there were other options for me starting out on my journey, but I didn't know what they were.
No. You don't know until you know.
And so there was no ego involved in that portion of it. I said, this is how much, these are the resources I have. I had certain parameters. I said, I'm not going to risk my family for this outcome. So we had developed a certain income and a certain lifestyle, and I said, I'm going to do this, but I have to make sure that I don't make my family suffer. So that was an inviolable rule.
Yes.
That was one. And so I had to start out small. Okay. That's why.
Well, Russ, it's been a great time. I would have been here another hour and a half.
We can stay here.
I can stay here all day and talk all day, every day, because I've learned so much.
We didn't even talk about business.
No, we didn't. The mindset, and I'm excited to get some more episodes and then start bringing on people that I had in the beginning, and then start bringing people back on and seeing just even 3-4 months in this entrepreneurship game. You grow so fast.
Yes, you do.
And like I saw in 6 months, you see me grow in 6 months, and it's very positive, and it's the only community, it's the only environment that gives me a feel of the military camaraderie that I was missing before I jumped into it. So I really want to appreciate you coming out. I really respect you. I really look up to you. Well, I know we're going to work together.
Yes,
I'm finding a way.
We definitely will.
And this is the start today. So how do we reach you? How tell us a little bit about your websites. I know you have a podcast.
Yes. The main way to reach me is at my email. Russ, R-U-S-S, at systro.org. SYSTRO.org.
I'll have all the links.
I love email.
Yes,
I love
me too.
people. I love getting feedback. I love people sending me email to communicate. I can deal with email at 3 a.m. I can't call you at 3 a.m. and you can't call me at 3 a.m. Well, maybe you could. But you can always send me an email anytime. My phone, 813-520-5770. You can send me a text, and I respond to those.
Absolutely.
Those are really like last minute type of things or coordination type of things, but email is the primary. My website, of course, www.systro.org. I've got a page on there called the Purposefully Profitable Program, which outlines all the things I offer within the Systro framework. I've got a book out called 15. It's your amazing itty bitty book. Small Business for Service Members, 15 things you need to know to be purposefully profitable.
Perfect.
I've got the Purposefully Profitable podcast, and I've got presentations that I do. So it is a lot.
All the links will be there. All the links will be there. So I want to thank everyone in the crowd, everyone in the audience, everyone at home for joining us on another episode of Vetting America, live downtown Tampa, Attic Cafe. Another beautiful Friday. Even if it's a little dreary out, it's still Tampa, Florida, and I'm okay with it.
Hey, it's bright in here.
It's bright in here. Again, I would like to thank our sponsors, Richard McIntyre of McIntyreFirm.com, Chris Chrismistos of Podfest.us, and our executive producer, Anthony Kovic, and again, Russ Barnes. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Have a great one.
All right, you too.